The increase in the areas dedicated to blueberries at a global level is impressive. They have more than doubled in the last decade. And the increase is even higher in Europe and in the Mediterranean basin. This trend is supported by market demand, where varietal innovation and technologies play a central role. During this new Macfrut Academy video lesson, we'll focus precisely on these topics and touch upon three important players: Spain, Morocco and Italy. Without further ado, let's get started! Behind the development of blueberry cultivation in the Mediterranean basin is varietal innovation. Blueberry varieties are divided into southern highbush and northern highbush. The former has a low requirement for cool temperatures, hence being suitable for warm areas, whereas the latter requires more hours of cool temperatures. Southern blueberries grow faster, being in areas where they can benefit from more hours of daylight and favorable climates. This changes the dynamics of the business model adopted by companies in the north and in the south. Speaking of dynamics, let's see what the Mediterranean players are doing. Spain has been without doubt the main player for the European market for years, with a strong inclination towards exports. Much of it has always been destined to northern countries such as Germany, the UK and Italy. Then the market has changed in recent years with the rise of Morocco, which has certainly turned the tables. Morocco's production is also primarily oriented towards exports, with the UK as the main market in Europe. This is where the majority of the production goes, in addition to all the other consumer countries. A lot is therefore going to Italy, Germany and France, with the latter being a key network for Morocco. Both Spain and Morocco mostly grow the southern highbush varieties. They grow in areas where the climate is warm, and I say mostly because when we talk about Spain, we often tend to think about southern Spain, so Andalusia, from Huelva to the border with Portugal. However, to some extent, production has also taken place in the north of Spain recently, in Extremadura, north of Madrid, so the blueberries grown there obviously have different characteristics. Growing southern blueberries comes down to one reason: it's the climate that makes it possible. These are blueberries that require a limited number of hours of cool temperatures, ranging from 0 to 200 or 300 hours, depending on the type of variety. This allows us to bring production considerably forward and cover the periods of time that other countries cannot. In a number of cases, with more modern varieties that can be harvested a lot earlier, the harvest begins in November and goes on throughout winter, so December, January, February and March, up to April. In some cases, production can be further extended in Morocco due to the proximity of some of the areas to the Atlas Mountains. As for Italy, it's a bit different because the area of Italy is also completely different, so we are able to grow blueberries from north to south. In recent years, cultivated areas have expanded towards the south. In Italy, we are able to cover production periods that span from the beginning of the harvest in the south, in January, February, March and April, to the standard season in the north, so June, July, August until early September. This means that the period of time we're able to cover with blueberries is fairly extensive. Research is focusing on southern varieties. This is primarily for market-related reasons, since the areas and countries with warm climates are increasing. This is also because this type of blueberry grows faster, and even plant breeders are able to see the results of their work more rapidly. Varietal improvement is focusing on the crunchiness of blueberries, their shelf life and their adaptability to climate change, with low-chill and mid-chill varieties in areas where varieties with a requirement for cold temperatures of 700 to 800 hours used to be planted until a few years ago. Another frontier of research is finding solutions to bring production calendars forward more and more, both in southerly and northerly climates. Additional central topics are productivity and ease of harvest, with blueberries being fully visible on the plant. Specific research is being carried out on this subject to develop plants that are suitable for mechanical harvesting. Lastly, researchers look for varieties with low water requirements that are resistant to pathogens. Once a new commercially attractive variety has been selected, the propagation stage begins. Let's check it out together. Micropropagation is a biotechnological method to propagate a variety in a restricted environment within a short period of time, while guaranteeing a pathogen-free environment and also going against the standard vegetative development in nature. As a result, this enables you to have new material when it's needed for commercial purposes. The first step of micropropagation is the explant. So we take material from the plant that is genetically identified. We take cells that are capable of reproducing quickly. Afterwards, the cells undergo a sterilization process and are inserted into specific substrates that allow them to multiply. Once a sufficient amount of material has been obtained for propagation, it is then used for the next stage, which is rooting. This is how you can have controlled orders of material at given times. After the explant, the plant material goes through a pre-multiplication stage, where it adjusts to the micropropagation conditions, followed by the multiplication stage. By using hormones, we increase the amount of material needed in order to fulfill the orders. Plants kept in a sterile environment are subject to controlled photoperiod, controlled temperature, and controlled humidity, which results in a more uniform plant development. During the last stage, that is, rooting, it is fundamental to control humidity. For this purpose, we use greenhouses built to regulate humidity, which is very high initially, between 90 and 98%, and decreases as the plant grows its roots. Once the plant has grown roots, it is ready to leave the laboratory and be transferred to the field for the last part of the rooting stage. Moving from a sterile to an open environment, such as a nursery, is obviously the most critical step. We always try to be careful and make sure the plants are not exposed to stress. Once the plants leave our micropropagation laboratory in 480 whole trays, they are transplanted here in the nursery into a 104 whole tray. These trays are filled with a specific acid substrate, which is primarily made of peat and perlite. Then we add the trichoderma to the substrate to generate a symbiotic effect with the plant and foster a healthy root system and its development. Once transplanted, the plants are left to grow their roots for about a couple of months in a shade net house, like the one you can see here, and are simply irrigated with water and fertilizer. This is known as fertigation. At this point, once the plant has completely grown its roots, that the peat cube is filled with roots, at this stage and at this time of the year, it's transplanted into a vase of about 1 liter. In this case, we are carrying out a test with mulch using acid pine bark in order to limit the growth of weeds. Weeds are very dangerous as they take water and nutrients away from blueberry plants, which are suffocated and deprived of light and oxygen as weeds grow. In addition, they are also carriers of pathogens and microorganisms. The pathogens and insects that end up on the weeds can then be transmitted to the plant. Therefore, mulching allows us to increase the quality of the plants in addition to improving their health. After about 3 to 4 months, under these conditions, our plants have finished to grow roots. They are then ready to be shipped. The blueberry varietal offer is witnessing a strong and rapid evolution, with plenty of news appearing on the market. As a nursery, we have focused our attention on providing our clients with the varieties that best suit the needs in recent years, from both an environmental and a production point of view. To give you a general overview and try to respond to the needs of the farmers more accurately, the varietal selection attention is mainly centered on the so-called southern varieties, that is, those adapting to climates with fewer hours of winter cold. Interest is slightly lower in northern varieties today. The Duke variety is still seen as a reference for many markets. On the other hand, the development of southern varieties is rapid and continuous. Among the new varieties that are already on the market and have excellent results, we can mention Cupla. As a variety, it's ideal for southern Italy, where production mainly takes place during February and March. We can also mention other varieties that we have recently acquired with an exclusive license from the University of Buenos Aires breeding program. We are already successfully testing the first plants, which we expect will develop excellently in the future. We have a portfolio of varieties that meet some of the characteristics that farmers and consumers are looking for in the two macro categories, starting with the southern varieties, which are growing the most on the market due to the expansion of production areas towards places where the requirement for cool temperatures is low. I'd like to mention the Cupla variety, which we have the sole right to manage for Italy and Greece. As a variety, it certainly has key organoleptic properties. It is also an early variety, which is a major competitive advantage for farmers and distribution companies. Another variety we have is Ventura, which is the standard for southern varieties. It is grown a lot in southern Italy, but also in many other areas such as Spain and Morocco, and where the requirements for cool temperatures are similar. In 2025, we are going to start the first commercial tests with a club of 4 varieties that we manage globally. They are varieties that come from a breeding program in Argentina carried out by Fauba University and Early Crop, and that we manage. There are 5 producers and distributors that are going to form a club worldwide. These are varieties that have 2 main characteristics. They are particularly early, which helps bring the harvest forward in warm environments, meaning the main countries that produce southern blueberries, in other words, Morocco, Spain, southern Portugal and Italy, where we're going to start the first tests next year. The second characteristic is the lengthy shelf life they have. So these varieties are suitable for transport, can be stored for a long time, and are exceptionally crunchy. Speaking of northern varieties, the 2 main ones we distribute are Valor and Cargo, in addition to the classic Duke, which is an early variety, has been the standard for several years and is still a free variety, so everyone can grow it. With regard to Cargo, it's a key variety as it can be stored for a long time in cool stores or with techniques like controlled atmosphere. As a consequence, distribution of products coming from Italy can be extended into the Italian market. Another variety we can expand on is Blue Ribbon, which is a mid-chill variety that is able to adapt to both environments with more hours of cold and in slightly warmer ones. It's very plastic, it has a very good and interesting taste, and it's one of the main varieties that is still cultivated in Europe today. Two additional northern varieties we have are Top Shelf and Last Call, which help extend the calendar. It's time to head to Spain, to the province of Huelva, to learn more about the Cupla variety developed by the Spanish cooperative Cuna de Platero. As far as blueberry cultivation is concerned, our cooperative has been subject to varietal change in recent years, moving from more traditional varieties such as Star to others that allow our producers to provide highly productive, high-quality early blueberries. These varieties are Snow Chaser, Manila, and most of all, the variety owned by the cooperative, Cupla, which we are working with not only internally but also externally and are in full international expansion with. The work we are doing with Cupla is quality work for our clients, especially supermarkets across Europe. At the same time, a worldwide network of plantations of this variety is emerging in countries including Italy, Greece, Turkey, Egypt, Portugal, Morocco, and Mexico. In the history of the development and international expansion of this variety, our cooperative decided that the variety should also be made available to non-members, and it is also available in other areas. This is why we have turned to international partners to support us in Italy and Greece. For instance, we have benefited from the support of a well-known partner, the G-Berries Group or the Mulari family. We have another partner in America for the area of Mexico, namely the B-Bex company, the Frescampo Group. For all other countries, we have an international partner, Cal Pacific MCO Cal. As a variety, it can be adapted to various production systems, both soil-bound and, as you can see here, hydroponics through the use of pots and bags of coconut fiber substrate. All this helps to make it a very interesting variety and ensures that it is suitable for a wide range of areas and conditions. From a field and producer point of view, on the other hand, we should highlight the ability to produce fruit early, which is useful to start production at times when it's usually very profitable for farmers. On the other hand, one of its characteristics is the high production per plant. And finally, another fundamental aspect at an agronomic and management level is the ease of harvesting, with very high efficiency and a reduction in labor costs compared to other varieties. It is not a new variety within the cooperative. We have been growing it for several years now, and we have reached 100 hectares and an annual production of 800 tons. As a result, we have understood its qualities, namely its uniform and medium size, averaging 18 mm, a balanced flavor of sweet and sour, and an average Brix value of 12. These characteristics make it a very interesting variety, even in a market that is already acknowledged for its large surface area. Within our cooperative, it has been used commercially for several years now, with significant volumes getting to European markets, which is a positive factor. Another top-level player for berries in Spain is Fruit, which is growing blueberries in super-intensive plantations. Significant growth has been registered with regard to blueberries in Macfrut in the last 12 years. Within the research department of Macfrut, we launched an improvement program in 2013. The first plantations were created in 2020, and now we're starting to see the results. We started with the first crossings in 2013, obtained the first varieties around 2020, and now we are in production. We are looking for varieties to increase profitability for our producers, and at the same time, varieties that match what our clients want to add to the market. We started with standard varieties and an average production of about 13 to 14 tons. Some of the new varieties have reached 16 tons or 18 tons. For example, thanks to new genetics and new production systems, this variety allows you to have between 10 and 15,000 plants per hectare and a production of at least 45 tons. Unlike standard varieties with about 5,000 plants per hectare. Another aspect that has to do with production that we have improved is the yield. With standard varieties, about 4.5 kilos can be harvested per hour. With the new varieties, we have increased this figure, reaching a yield of 8, 9, even 10 kilos of blueberries harvested per hour. When blueberries are processed and packaged, they go through a machine, and here too the new varieties have a higher productivity. In standard and early varieties, 13, 15 to 17%, even 20% goes to waste, depending on the time of production. With the new varieties, on the other hand, waste is significantly reduced, dropping to 3, 4 or 5% at most. After this overview of varietal innovation, let's head back to the field to see the cultivation of blueberries in detail. Blueberry cultivation can be either soil-bound or soilless. Soil-bound cultivation requires loose soil with an acidic pH, which is hard to come by in Italy. Only in few areas is the land suitable for soil-bound cultivation. This is why we usually go for soilless cultivation, as in this case, where cultivation in pots was chosen. These are 50-liter pots that have been filled with a coarse-grained acid substrate to ensure excellent water drainage and air circulation. Alternatively, soilless cultivation is also possible in bags. They are cheaper, but they cannot be reused and will have to be disposed of when the plantation is removed. Standard-sized plantations are usually preferred in northern Italy, meaning that the distance between each row is about 3 meters, with a plant per row. Moving to southern European and Mediterranean basin areas, such as Sicily, Spain and Morocco, plantations tend to have a higher density instead. The distance between rows is usually 2 meters or 2.5 meters. As for the density along the row, there are about 80 centimeters between each plant. Moreover, in the Mediterranean basin, soilless cultivation tends to be done in smaller pots. These are typically around 30 to 35 liters, whereas here in Emilia-Romagna we prefer to grow blueberries in 50-liter pots. Transplanting takes place either late in the summer or early in autumn, or better yet, early in spring. Once you get the plant, it has to be removed from its original pot and transplanted either to the ground or into pots, as in this case. The root system should be lightly massaged at the time of transplantation, paying attention not to damage it. Afterwards, the plants should be pruned at a height of about 30 centimeters to promote tillering. Mechanization is becoming increasingly common in intensive plantations, both for pruning and when harvesting. Speaking of pruning, southern blueberries need a little more attention because they are obviously going to be pruned at a time when the climate is very hot, and therefore we can't put it off. Farmers have to be very precise when pruning. Otherwise, the plant suffers in the summer and blight is still quite high. A key element of blueberries is their crunchiness. Another key factor is the size of the berry. Varietal research is leading to ever larger berries, with a larger size well over 20 millimeters in diameter. This type of product is perfect to be consumed as a snack. This means that it is gradually moving out of the standard produce section in supermarkets and displayed in the snack aisle instead. There are countries that are far ahead in this direction, which originated precisely because we have blueberries of an increasingly large size. This does not mean that there is no longer room for smaller blueberries. For instance, recent research shows that some consumers prefer smaller blueberries. This is the case when they are consumed in combination with other food. Yogurt with blueberries for breakfast, to name one. This is because larger blueberries are not the best for it. This means that there is still space on the market for both types, and blueberry sorting is becoming more and more common. This is because it is very important, at least from our point of view, to have uniform blueberries in clamshells. Something that should not happen is having a size 12 blueberry together with a size 24 blueberry. However, when the market is segmented, there is room for both. Then obviously, a myth to debunk is that larger blueberries are not necessarily the tastiest. Rather, there are smaller blueberries that have excellent organoleptic properties, and there are larger blueberries that have excellent organoleptic properties, but the two are not linked. We have gone through all the different stages from research to the moment when a blueberry plant is ready to be planted. So now it's time to go out in the field and see some plantation examples. The first is located in the Po Valley, in the area subject to hailstorms, so protective structures have been installed. This plantation has about 3,000 plants per hectare, which have been positioned in 3-meter wide rows with an 80 centimeter distance between pots. As far as irrigation is concerned, blueberry plants need a lot of water constantly throughout the day. In light of this, drip irrigation is the best method. This plantation is equipped with a fertilization system which is essential for the plants, as it allows us to best measure out fertilization and the acidity of the soil. It's all done in pots. And why in pots? This is something that has to do with the soil. There is no acidic soil in our area. The acidity of blueberries is pH 5, so we have to maintain the acidity of the soil. We use a specific type of acidic potting soil, and then we make sure the soil remains acid. We have a fertigation system connected to a photovoltaic system that allows us to benefit from the sun as much as possible, given that we're in a flat area. The fertigation system works from the morning until the evening, so to meet the water requirements of the plants. It is equipped with drippers that have a flow rate ranging from 3 liters to 6 liters per hour, depending on the plant varieties we have. We work with irrigation cycles of 7 to 8 minutes, 4, 5 or even 6 times throughout the day. To protect our plantation from weeds, we have opted for sheet mulching. This solution allows us to protect the bottom of the pot from weed invasion, which is something that causes issues in the pot and that has to be cleaned constantly. We started using 1 meter wide sheets to ensure that the pot, which has a diameter of approximately 40 to 50 centimeters, is firmly secured in the center of the sheet. We have got a positive result with this technique, as it prevents weeds from growing under the pot, therefore protecting it. We have added a second sheet to some of the rows in our plantation this year. We have taken this decision because we noticed we still had some weed invasion even with the use of 1 meter wide sheets. Now we are using 2 meter wide sheets so that the pot is in the center of the sheet, while also ensuring more margin in terms of covered ground. Blueberries are also an opportunity for hill farmers. Let's move to the Emilian Apennines now, 800 meters above sea level, to see how cultivation in pots and small surfaces is done. We are 800 meters above sea level, so this is a hilly area. We had to plant blueberries in pots and not in the ground because the soil tends to be very clayey here. We opted for plastic pots because they are much more manageable, much lighter, they are reusable, and above all, if one pot tips over, it won't break. So the plant won't suffer any damage except for some possible minor issues from the fall. Alternatively, there are two other solutions, terracotta pots and bags, which we have ruled out because terracotta tends to be much heavier than plastic and it would break in the event of a pot falling. As far as bags are concerned, the problem here is that when it's time to replace the plants, given that blueberry plants last 10 years, the bags have to be thrown away and bought again. However, if you're using plastic pots, you can obviously use them again over time. There are 4,000 plants in our plantation, corresponding to about 1 hectare, and it spreads downhill. We have 4 different types of varieties, which are gradual: Duke, Liberty, Megas Blue and Aurora. We also based our choice on the altitude. We had to choose blueberries that would be able to withstand the temperatures that we have in winter here, which are lower than those found in plains. They are varieties with a gradual production, meaning that it begins mid to end of June and goes on until early August. So here too we are slightly ahead of time compared to blueberry cultivation in plains. The harvest is done manually from plant to plant. We focus on each plant and take a look at the fruit first. To be considered ready for harvest, blueberries need to have a purplish color, but can't be soft. It still has to be hard. If a blueberry is soft, it means that it is already ripe, so it must be collected, but it cannot be sold. When the fruit is still yellow or pink instead, it must be left on the plant for a few more days. Blueberries are harvested from the plant and placed in a basket like this one here. Once we're done with each row of plants, we move all the blueberries we have harvested into a crate. Each crate is first assigned a number to keep track of the row that was harvested and is then taken to our processing plant, where it is immediately packaged. Selecting the right variety is important, but so is putting it in the best conditions to produce. This is done by choosing the most suitable agronomic techniques and protecting it from thermal stress. For protected blueberry cultivation, temperature control is essential being a plant native to the undergrowth that can't withstand high temperatures. It is precisely on these aspects that the research carried out by Arrigoni focused on. The Italian group specialized in technical textile applications and protective screens for agriculture has developed a range of solutions to support blueberry production, from thermoreflective screens to fabrics for insect control and weather protection. These products, for example Robusta, ensure better light diffusion with additives such as light diffusion, increase shading, reflect infrared rays, and thus manage to reduce the temperature in the covered area. Using agrotextiles to mitigate the effects of climate change is held in high regard by producers. Let's now go to Basilicata in the south of Italy to know more about this. We notice that farms are using our thermoreflective screens to mitigate the environment inside greenhouses. In this company, they mainly use the thermoreflective screens from the Robusta range, as the nets can be used both directly on the structure and also combined with plastic film. Different areas, such as northern and southern Italy, have different shading needs, which is why Arrigoni has developed the Robusta line, which is thicker and provides greater shading, and Prisma in a lighter tape, which is perfect with plastic film. These thermoreflective screens are essential because they help reduce the temperature inside our greenhouses by about 45 degrees. This favors blueberry development by mitigating the temperature, preventing sunburn and reducing water stress at the same time. There are different shading percentages to choose from. In southern Italy, the shading percentage of the nets that are installed typically ranges from 40 to 60%, while the shading percentage of the nets that are sold in northern Italy tends to be slightly lower. Another important feature of thermoreflective screens is that they are mainly used on greenhouses and tunnels, which means that they are quick to install and to remove. Thermoreflective screens tend to be used for a few months a year, especially when temperatures and solar radiation can damage the crop. Then, in autumn, when the days get shorter and the temperatures drop, these screens can be removed easily and stored. This contributes to extending the average life of the product, ensuring constant maintenance. With such an organized system, the blueberry production and harvest cycles can be extended. This is possible because the screens reflect infrared radiation, improve the microclimate and reduce the temperature, while increasing the percentage of light diffusion for better plant development. The high degree of protection against sunburn, optimal light management, and easy assembly and disassembly are the strengths of Arrigoni's solutions, aimed at simplifying field management and ensuring excellent fruit quality for producers. Constant improvement is required from companies providing thermoreflective screens as a consequence of the increasing southernization of the climate in the Mediterranean countries, leading to higher temperatures and unpredictable weather events. Arrigoni is focusing its research on two aspects. Firstly, the quality of light to ensure optimal provision for plants and avoid harmful peaks. Secondly, temperature mitigation, aiming to further expand the thermal delta between indoors and outdoors, obtaining the ideal conditions for blueberry growth and productivity. Our journey into the world of blueberries has come to an end, but we're coming back to it with a second video lesson where we are going to see in detail the work at the processing plant, the applied technologies and the key packaging stage. In the meantime, you can keep up with Macfrut on our social media platforms and get real-time updates on LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you again next time.